Ben Miller gripped the shuttle controls as warning lights flashed red across the dashboard. The small cargo vessel shook violently as it plunged through the atmosphere of the unknown planet below. Steam hissed from broken pipes behind him, and the smell of burning electronics filled the cramped cockpit. "Come on, come on," Ben whispered through gritted teeth. He was just a maintenance engineer, not a pilot. His job was fixing broken machines on the research ship Horizon, not flying through alien storms. But when the regular pilot got sick with space flu, someone had to deliver the supply drop to the science team on the surface. The shuttle's engines screamed as Ben tried to level out the descent. Through the cracked viewscreen, he could see a landscape of red rocks and strange purple crystals jutting up like frozen lightning. The ground rushed toward him faster than he wanted to think about. Impact came hard and fast. Ben's safety harness cut into his chest as the shuttle bounced twice, then slid across the rocky ground in a shower of sparks. Metal groaned and bent. Glass shattered somewhere behind him. Then everything went quiet except for the hiss of escaping air and the tick of cooling metal. Ben sat still for a moment, checking if anything hurt. His head throbbed and his shoulder ached, but nothing seemed broken. He unbuckled himself carefully and looked around the damaged cockpit. Most of the control panels were dark or sparking. The communication system was completely dead. "Well, this is just perfect," he muttered. Ben grabbed the emergency kit from under his seat and made his way to the back of the shuttle. The cargo hold was a mess of scattered supply crates and twisted metal, but his engineering eyes quickly spotted what he needed: spare parts, tools, and most importantly, the emergency beacon. The beacon was designed to send a distress signal that could reach the Horizon in orbit. But when Ben opened the case, his heart sank. The main transmitter was cracked in half, and several key components were missing entirely. He spent the next hour inventorying what he had to work with. The shuttle's hull was breached in 3 places, letting in the thin but breathable atmosphere of this world. The engines were completely destroyed, but the power cells were still working, and Ben had always been good at making broken things work again. As he worked, Ben noticed how quiet this planet was. No birds, no insects, no wind. Just silence and the distant hum of those purple crystals. The red sun overhead felt warm on his skin, but something about this place made him nervous. Ben managed to patch together a basic shelter using cargo crates and pieces of the shuttle's hull. He sealed the gaps with repair foam and set up a small heater powered by one of the portable cells. It wasn't comfortable, but it would keep him alive while he worked on the beacon. The repair job took most of the day. Ben had to rebuild the transmitter using parts from the shuttle's navigation system and some creative rewiring. His hands were steady despite the situation. 20 years of fixing machines in deep space had taught him to stay calm when things went wrong. By the time the red sun started to set, Ben had a working beacon. Not pretty, but functional. He activated it and watched the green status light blink steadily. Now he just had to wait for rescue and hope nothing dangerous lived on this world. As night fell, the purple crystals began to glow brighter. They pulsed with a soft light that reminded Ben of a heartbeat. He ate a ration bar and tried to get some sleep, but the strange pulsing kept him awake. Morning brought new problems. Ben's beacon was working, but he had no way to know if anyone could hear it. The Horizon might be on the other side of the planet by now. He needed to find higher ground to boost the signal, or maybe find some way to amplify it. Ben packed his tools and some supplies into a backpack and set out to explore. The landscape was unlike anything he had ever seen. Red rocks formed impossible arches and spirals. The purple crystals grew in perfect geometric patterns. Everything looked too organized, too planned to be natural. After walking for 2 hours, Ben climbed to the top of a tall ridge and looked out across the alien landscape. What he saw made him stop breathing for a moment. In the distance, massive structures rose from the red plain. They looked like buildings, but they moved and shifted like living things. Walls flowed like water, then hardened into new shapes. Towers stretched toward the sky, then split apart and reformed in different configurations. "That's definitely not natural," Ben said to himself. The structures were several miles away, but even from this distance Ben could see they were huge. Some of the towers reached up into the clouds, and there was something else. Lights moving between the buildings in organized patterns like traffic on a highway. Ben sat down on a boulder and tried to think. These buildings meant intelligent life. That could be good or bad. Maybe they could help him contact his ship, or maybe they would see him as a threat. He was still considering his options when he heard the sound. It started as a low hum, almost below the range of human hearing, but it grew louder and higher until it became a musical tone that seemed to come from everywhere at once. The purple crystals around him pulsed brighter in rhythm with the sound. Then Ben saw them. 3 objects appeared in the sky above the distant city. They moved too smoothly to be aircraft, flowing through the air like fish swimming through water. As they got closer, Ben could see they were made of the same flowing material as the buildings. Their surfaces rippled and changed color as they moved. The objects were heading straight for him. Ben grabbed his pack and ran. He had no idea if these beings were friendly, but he wasn't going to wait around to find out. He scrambled down the back side of the ridge, trying to put as much rock between himself and the approaching craft as possible. But the objects were fast. Within minutes, they surrounded the area where Ben was hiding. He crouched behind a large crystal formation and watched through a gap in the rocks. The 3 craft settled to the ground with no sound at all. They were beautiful in a way that made Ben's chest tight. Their surfaces shimmered like oil on water, constantly shifting between silver, gold, and deep blue. Each one was about the size of a small house, but they moved with the grace of living creatures. Openings appeared in the sides of the craft, and beings stepped out. Ben had to bite his tongue to keep from gasping. The aliens were tall, at least 8 feet, with long limbs and graceful movements. Their skin was pale and seemed to glow with its own light. They had 4 arms instead of 2, and their faces were angular with large eyes that reflected the light like mirrors. They wore no clothing that Ben could see, but their skin showed intricate patterns that might have been natural markings or some kind of technology. When they moved, the patterns shifted and flowed like the surfaces of their ships. The aliens spread out in a search pattern. They moved silently, but Ben could hear that musical humming again. He realized they were communicating with each other using sound frequencies his ears could barely detect. One of the aliens stopped near Ben's hiding place. It tilted its head and looked directly at the crystal formation where he was crouched. Ben held his breath and tried not to move. The alien approached slowly. Its large eyes fixed on the exact spot where Ben was hiding. There was no point in running now. Ben stood up slowly, his hands raised to show he wasn't carrying weapons. The alien stopped when it saw him. For a long moment they stared at each other. Then the alien made a sound like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. The other aliens quickly gathered around. Ben's heart pounded as he found himself surrounded by the tall beings. Up close he could see that their patterns were definitely moving, flowing across their skin like slow rivers of light. Their eyes held an intelligence that was both familiar and completely foreign. One of the aliens stepped forward. It reached out with one of its 4 hands, moving slowly and carefully. Ben forced himself to stand still as the long fingers touched his forehead. The touch was warm and sent a tingling sensation through his skull. Suddenly Ben could understand them. "Human," the alien said, though its mouth didn't move. The voice seemed to come from inside Ben's head. "You are human." "Yes," Ben replied, not sure if he should speak out loud or just think his response. "You must come with us," the alien continued. "The Queen must see you immediately. She has been waiting for your kind for many cycles." "Waiting for me? I don't understand." "Understanding will come, but you must come now. The Queen has commanded it." Ben looked around at the circle of tall aliens. He didn't see any weapons, but he also didn't see any choice. "What if I refuse?" The alien that had touched him tilted its head. "Why would you refuse? This is a great honor. The Queen kneels before none, but she will kneel before you." "That doesn't make any sense." "Much does not make sense until it does. Come." The aliens guided Ben toward one of their craft. As they approached, an opening formed in the side like a mouth opening to speak. The interior was larger than seemed possible, with walls that glowed softly and floors that felt warm under his feet. Ben found himself in a chamber with no visible controls or crew stations. The aliens gestured for him to sit on what might have been a chair, though it felt more like sitting on a cloud. As soon as he was seated, the craft lifted off so smoothly that Ben barely felt the movement. Through walls that became transparent at his approach, Ben watched the red landscape roll by below. They were heading toward the distant city at incredible speed, but with no sense of acceleration. The alien technology was so advanced it might as well have been magic. "Where are you taking me?" Ben asked. "To the Heart City. replied the alien who seemed to be their leader. To the throne of voices. The Queen Vessa waits for you there. Why does she want to see me? I'm just an engineer. I fix broken machines. You are human. That is enough. That is everything. Ben wanted to ask more questions, but the aliens fell silent. They stood perfectly still as their craft flew over the alien landscape. Ben watched mountain ranges of crystalline valleys filled with flowing metallic rivers pass below. The city grew larger ahead of them. Ben could see now that it was vast beyond belief. Stretching to the horizon in all directions, the buildings moved constantly, growing and changing like living organisms. Streams of light flowed between them like blood vessels in a massive body. As they got closer, Ben could see other craft moving through the air around the city. Some were similar to the one he rode in, while others defied description entirely. They moved in complex patterns that reminded him of a dance or a symphony made visible. The craft carrying Ben descended toward the center of the city, where the largest structures reached highest into the sky. These buildings pulsed with brighter light and seemed to be the heart of whatever civilization had built this place. They landed on a platform that formed itself from the flowing material of a massive tower. As soon as the craft settled, the platform began to rise, carrying them up the side of the building like an elevator made of liquid metal. Ben's ears popped as they climbed higher and higher. Through the transparent walls of the platform, he could see the city spreading out below like a living map. The scale of it was overwhelming. Millions of the tall aliens moved through the flowing streets and buildings like blood cells in a vast organism. Finally, the platform stopped at what had to be near the top of the tower. An opening formed in front of them, leading into a chamber so large Ben couldn't see the far walls. The ceiling disappeared into darkness above. "Come," said the alien leader. "The Queen waits." They walked through corridors that shifted and changed around them. The walls showed patterns that might have been art or writing or something completely beyond human understanding. The air hummed with power and intelligence. At last they entered a chamber that took Ben's breath away. It was a perfect sphere, hundreds of feet across, with walls that showed the stars outside as if they were floating in space. In the center of the sphere, on a raised platform that seemed to be made of crystallized music, stood the Queen. Queen Vessa was like the other aliens, but larger and more graceful. Her skin showed patterns so complex they hurt to look at directly. Her forearms moved in slow, hypnotic gestures, and her large eyes held the wisdom of ages. She was surrounded by dozens of other aliens, all smaller than her, but clearly important. They moved in careful patterns around her platform, creating a living mandala of bodies and light. Ben's escort led him toward the center of the chamber. As they approached, the other aliens stepped back, forming a clear path to the Queen. Ben could feel hundreds of alien eyes watching his every move. When they were still 50 feet away, one of Ben's escorts made a sound like singing crystal. All movement in the chamber stopped. Queen Vessa turned her attention to the small group approaching her throne, her eyes fixed on Ben, and he felt something electric pass through the air between them. The Queen's patterns flared brighter, and she made a sound that was part music, part language, and part something Ben had no name for. Then Queen Vessa, ruler of this impossible city, and who knew how many worlds beyond, stepped down from her platform and walked toward Ben. Her movement was so graceful it seemed like dancing, but there was urgency in her approach. When she was 10 feet away, the Queen stopped. She looked at Ben for a long moment, her alien features unreadable. Then, to Ben's complete shock and the apparent amazement of every other alien in the chamber, Queen Vessa lowered herself to one knee, her head bowed, and her forearms spread wide in what could only be a gesture of respect or worship. Around the chamber, every other alien immediately followed their queen's example, dropping to their knees with a sound like wind through a crystal forest. Ben stood frozen in the center of the vast chamber, surrounded by hundreds of kneeling aliens with their queen bowed before him. He had absolutely no idea what was happening or what he was supposed to do. "I don't understand," he said, his voice echoing in the sudden silence. Queen Vessa raised her head and looked at him with eyes that seemed to hold stars. When she spoke, her voice filled his mind with warmth and reverence. "Welcome, inheritor. We have waited so long for your kind to find us. The burden you carry is great, though you do not yet know it. But first you must understand what you are, and what your people are destined to become." Ben opened his mouth to protest that he was nobody special, but the Queen raised one of her hands. "Rest now, human Ben Miller. Tomorrow, You will learn why the universe kneels before your species and why we need you more than you can possibly imagine. Ben spent the night in a chamber that defied every law of physics he knew. The walls showed a view of space so clear he could see individual stars, but when he touched them, they felt solid and warm. A bed materialized from the floor when he approached it, perfectly sized for his human body. Food appeared on a table that grew from nothing when his stomach rumbled. Despite the comfortable surroundings, Ben barely slept. Questions raced through his mind. Why had the Queen called him inheritor? What burden was she talking about? And why did an entire civilization apparently worship humans? When morning came, or what passed for morning in this strange place, Queen Vesa arrived with a small group of her advisors. They moved through the wall like it was made of water. Then the wall solidified behind them. "Are you ready to learn the truth, Ben Miller?" the Queen asked, her voice warm in his mind. "I think so," Ben replied. "Though I'm not sure I'll believe it." Queen Vesa gestured, and the chamber around them changed. The walls became transparent, showing not the current city but images of the past. Ben saw ancient civilizations rising and falling across countless worlds. He watched species evolve, build great empires, then fade into history. "Long ago," Queen Vesa began, "before my people learned to shape matter with thought, before we built the Heart City, there existed the first ones. Your scientists might call them the architects. They were beings of pure consciousness who had evolved beyond the need for physical form. The images around them showed creatures of living light moving between stars like dolphins swimming through an ocean. They built structures that spanned entire solar systems and created wonders that made the flowing city look primitive. The architects discovered something terrible," Queen Vesa continued. "The universe itself is dying, not in the way stars die and are reborn, but truly dying. A cosmic decay that will eventually consume all matter, all energy, all possibility of life." Ben felt a chill run down his spine. "How long do we have?" "Millions of your years. But for beings who think in cosmic time, it is tomorrow." The architects realized they could not stop this decay, but they could create a solution, a species capable of transcending physical reality itself and leading all life into a new form of existence. The images changed to show the architects visiting countless worlds, studying different species, conducting experiments that took thousands of years. They were searching for something specific. They needed beings with very particular traits, Queen Vesa explained. Intelligence, but not just raw computing power. Creativity that could find solutions where none seemed possible. Emotional strength to endure impossible hardships. And most importantly, the ability to unite different groups under a common cause. Ben watched the images with growing unease. What does this have to do with humans? Everything. The architects planted genetic and spiritual markers in promising species across the galaxy. Subtle changes that would guide evolution toward their goal. Most species failed to develop correctly. They became too logical, too emotional, too aggressive, or too passive. But a few succeeded. The images focused on a small blue-green planet orbiting a yellow star. Ben recognized Earth immediately. "Humans are the most successful result of the architect's work," Queen Vesa said. "Your species displays all the required traits in perfect balance. But more than that, you possess something the architects did not expect. Hope that refuses to die even in the face of certain destruction." Ben shook his head. "That's impossible. Humans are barely out of the Stone Age compared to your technology. We can't even get along with each other, let alone save the universe." "Your technology is irrelevant," Queen Vesa replied. "What matters is your nature. Observe." The chamber showed scenes from human history. Ben watched early humans surviving ice ages, plagues, and natural disasters that should have wiped them out. He saw civilizations rise from the ashes of destroyed empires, stronger than before. He watched humans face impossible odds and somehow find a way to win. "Every species faces extinction events," Queen Vesa explained. "Most surrender when defeat seems certain. Humans adapt, innovate, and keep fighting. When logical solutions fail, you create illogical ones that somehow work. When divided, you find common ground in the face of greater threats." Ben saw images of humans from his own time. Rescue workers digging for survivors after earthquakes. Scientists collaborating across political boundaries. Ordinary people risking their lives to help strangers. It wasn't the big heroic moments that impressed the Queen, but the small everyday acts of stubborn hope. "Your people's greatest strength is not intelligence or technology," Queen Vesa said. "It is your absolute refusal to accept that anything is truly impossible. When the universe itself is ending, That trait is exactly what we need. The images faded, leaving them in the simple chamber again. Ben sat heavily on the bed, trying to process what he had learned. "So what happens now?" he asked. "Do you expect me to save the universe? I'm a maintenance engineer, not some cosmic hero." "You misunderstand," Queen Vesa said gently. "The burden is not yours alone, but your entire species. And it will not fall to this generation, or the next, or even the next 1,000. The cosmic decay is still millions of years away, but preparation must begin now." "What kind of preparation?" Queen Vesa gestured again, and the chamber filled with new images. Ben saw vast networks of civilizations working together, sharing knowledge and resources. He watched species learning to transcend their physical limitations, guided by human insight and determination. "We have been waiting for humanity to reach the stars so we could begin teaching," Queen Vesa explained. "Not just humans, but all species. The humans will be the teachers and leaders because only they have the right combination of traits." "But every civilization must participate." Ben felt overwhelmed. "This is too much. I can't represent all of humanity. I don't have that authority." "You do not need authority. You need only to be human, to demonstrate the traits that make your species special. Others will see and understand." As if summoned by the Queen's words, several aliens entered the chamber. But these were not the graceful, tall beings Ben had met before. One looked like a living crystal. Another resembled a cloud of gas held together by electromagnetic fields. A third appeared to be made of flowing metal. "Representatives of other species," Queen Vesa explained. "They have come to meet their first human." The crystal being approached Ben. When it spoke, its voice was like the sound of wind through a cave. "We have studied your species from afar. Your records show consistent patterns of behavior that seem impossible to our understanding. You sacrifice individual gain for group benefit, even when it offers no logical advantage." The gas cloud pulsed different colors as it communicated. "Your people show what we call irrational persistence. When faced with unsolvable problems, you continue trying new approaches long past the point where logical beings would surrender." The metal being flowed closer. "Most remarkable is your ability to maintain hope and humor in desperate situations. Our psychological models predict that such traits should be selected against by evolution, yet they persist and even strengthen in your species." Ben looked around at the assembled aliens. "You make it sound like we're some kind of miracle. But humans do plenty of terrible things too. We fight wars, destroy our environment, hurt each other." "Yes," Queen Vesa agreed. "These traits also come from your nature. But observe what happens when your species faces a truly existential threat." The chamber showed more human history. Enemies becoming allies during world wars, nations cooperating to fight diseases, the entire planet working together when facing natural disasters. Even with their flaws, humans consistently found ways to unite when survival was at stake. Your capacity for conflict is balanced by an even greater capacity for cooperation when it truly matters. Queen Vesa explained. "This is why the architects chose your species. When the universe itself is threatened, humans will find a way to bring everyone together." Ben stood up and walked to the transparent wall, looking out at the vast alien city. Millions of beings moved through the flowing streets, all part of a civilization beyond his comprehension. The responsibility they were asking him to accept felt crushing. "What if we fail?" he asked quietly. "Then all life in the universe ends," Queen Vesa replied simply. "But we do not believe you will fail. Your species has never faced a challenge they could not eventually overcome." Ben turned back to face the assembled aliens. "What do you need me to do?" "First, return to your people," Queen Vesa said. "Tell them what you have learned. Prepare them for contact with other species. Begin the process of building the great alliance that will be needed. They'll think I'm crazy. Some will. But others will recognize the truth. Humans have an intuitive understanding of cosmic purpose that most species lack. Your stories and myths are filled with tales of chosen people facing ultimate darkness. Part of you has always known this day would come." The crystal being stepped forward. "We will provide proof. Technology that will advance your species by centuries. Knowledge that will make the truth undeniable. But the real work will be harder," Queen Vesa continued. "Teaching your people to think beyond individual worlds, beyond individual species. Preparing them to guide others with wisdom and compassion rather than force." Ben thought about his crewmates aboard the Horizon, scientists and engineers dedicated to expanding human knowledge and reach. They would be the first to understand, the first to accept the challenge, How long do I have to prepare them? As long as needed. The cosmic decay follows a predictable timeline, but the preparation cannot be rushed. It may take thousands of years for humanity to be ready for their role, but it must begin with you, in this moment. The Queen approached Ben and placed one of her 4 hands on his shoulder. You asked why I knelt before you. It is because your species carries the last hope of all life in the universe. That is worthy of any honor we can offer. Ben felt the weight of cosmic responsibility settling on his shoulders, but surprisingly, it didn't crush him. Instead, he felt something familiar stirring in his chest, the stubborn human refusal to accept defeat. All right, he said. I'll do it. I'll go back and start preparing them, but I'm going to need help. You will have it, Queen Vesa promised. Representatives from many species will make themselves known to humanity in the coming years. The great work begins now. The Queen gestured and the chamber began to change again. But first you must learn more about what you will face. The cosmic decay is not just ending reality. It is actively hostile to life. There will be challenges beyond what any species has ever faced. For the next several hours, Ben learned about threats that existed beyond normal space and time. Entities that fed on consciousness itself, regions where the laws of physics were breaking down, and cosmic storms that could erase entire civilizations from existence. But he also learned about the tools and allies humanity would have. Technologies that could manipulate reality at the quantum level, species with abilities that seemed like magic, and most importantly, the combined wisdom of millions of civilizations working together. When the lessons ended, Ben felt transformed. Not physically, but mentally. He understood now that being human meant carrying something precious and unique in the cosmic order. The responsibility was enormous, but so was the honor. I'm ready to go back, he told Queen Vesa. Your ship has been contacted, she replied. They believe your shuttle suffered a navigation error, and that you have been stranded but safe. The truth of your experience will be yours to reveal when the time is right. A new craft materialized in the chamber, sleeker than the one that had brought Ben to the city. As he prepared to leave, Queen Vesa offered him a final gift, a small crystal that pulsed with the same rhythm as the larger formations on the planet. This will allow communication across any distance, she explained. When your people are ready to take their first steps toward their destiny, use it to contact us. Ben climbed into the craft, still amazed by everything he had experienced. As it lifted off from the flowing city, he looked back at Queen Vesa and her people. They had waited millions of years for humanity to emerge. Now the real work would begin. The flight back to his crashed shuttle took only minutes. Ben found his rescue team already there, loading salvage onto their ships. They greeted him with relief and questions about where he had been. I got lost, Ben told them, which was true in a way. Found some shelter in the crystal formations. My beacon must have malfunctioned. Captain Ross, the Horizon's commanding officer, studied Ben carefully. You look different, Miller. More focused, maybe. This experience change you somehow? Ben smiled, feeling the small crystal warm in his pocket. You could say that, Captain. I think I've found my purpose. As their ship lifted off from the red planet, Ben watched the distant city through the viewports. To his crewmates, it looked like strange geological formations. But Ben could see the truth, a civilization of unimaginable scope and power, waiting to help humanity claim their destiny as the universe's last hope. The journey back to Horizon gave Ben time to think about how to begin. He would start small with his own crew, plant seeds of the larger truth, begin preparing humanity for the greatest challenge any species had ever faced. And despite the enormity of the task ahead, Ben felt something that Queen Vesa had recognized as uniquely human. Absolute confidence that somehow, some way, they would find a solution. It was what made them human and what made them the universe's chosen inheritors. The stars waited, and Ben Miller, maintenance engineer turned cosmic messenger, was ready to help his species claim their inheritance.